Hello, good evening, and thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. Defending the district. Several states now sending personnel right here to the nation's capital. But is the National Guard about to start carrying weapons? A top Homeland Security official live tonight here on The Hill in moments. Plus, defending their position. Kristi Noem, did you see this? Taken to the cameras today in New Mexico and taking a paintbrush at one point in time to the border wall as the top Democrat in this town now threatens to haul the secretary up to the Hill. We'll explain. Also tonight, I guess you can call it the latest intel. Is the United States government about to acquire a multi-billion-dollar stake in a Fortune 500 company? What the White House is saying tonight on that front. And it's one of the big questions, right? When might there be the face-to-face? How long until Zelensky and Putin potentially get in a room together?
I can assure you that the United States government and the Trump administration is working with both Russia and Ukraine to make that bilateral happen as we speak.
We'll get into all those stories tonight, but first tonight here from the Hill, National Guard troops in the streets of D.C. as the president's defense of the capital city continues. Numbers set to increase as some state governors deploy their own National Guard members. But it was a much different story in another major American city today. The mayor of Boston vowing to push back against the attorney general, telling Pam Bondi her city won't bow down or back down on sanctuary city policies. Tricia McLaughlin from the Department of Homeland Security with me here on the Hill in a moment. Our Hannah Brandt on that taunt, I guess you could say, from the mayor of one of America's largest cities. But first, our Joe Khalil live tonight on what the White House is saying about those National Guard troops here on the ground. Joe?
Yeah, Blake, we got more than 1,000 additional coming. We asked the White House today, who decides where those National Guard troops go? We were told it's the Interagency Task Force. But we asked that question because all week and last week I've been doing live shots in front of armored trucks and National Guard troops. None of that is here where I am now. This is Southeast D.C. And sadly, but statistically, this is where the higher crime areas are. There are more murders, more robberies, more carjackings objectively here. But there aren't the National Guard presence you see outside the White House or outside the Washington Monument. We've been talking to folks who live and work here. A lot of them say they're questioning why that is, and they would welcome the presence here in these areas too.
Everybody's asking where all these, additional forces are, but we don't see them anywhere. Drive around Southeast and tell me where you see them. This show of force is almost, it seems like it's more of a spectacle for those that are visiting.
Blake, one woman literally said, help us, was her message. She lives here, has lived here for more than a decade. Meantime, the D.C. Police Union, which has been supportive of this takeover, they put out numbers overnight that say, in their view, this is working. They say crime is down by 8%. And look at some of these numbers, crime by crime. Some of them are stark, down 80%, 40% in some categories. Now, the sample size, Blake, is very small. It's only 5 days compared to the 5 days before the Guard was on the ground. But still, they're pointing to those numbers and saying we're having some success early on here.
All right, our Joe K live tonight, Southeast D.C. Joe, thank you. It was a much different scene and tone in Boston today. The mayor there, Michelle Wu, pushing back against the president's immigration policies in a letter to the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and in a press conference today. With me now, Hannah Brandt, NewsNation correspondent. Hannah, this was... I was watching some of this. It almost felt like a response or a taunt, I guess you could say, from the mayor to the current administration.
Yeah, I would say both are accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a really fiery response from Mayor Wu here. And let me kind of set the scene for you. Boston is a city where about 30% of the population is made up of immigrants. And Mayor Wu, she had this sort of press conference sort of rally. It was led by a mariachi band. There were advocates. There was a senator there as well. And this was all a response to this letter that Attorney General Pam Bondi had sent to dozens of leaders across the country, basically threatening some action against their sanctuary policies. Now, in that letter, Bondi basically said, you either comply with the deportation efforts from the federal government or we might prosecute you, or we might take away some funds. And in that letter also, Bondi basically gave them a deadline to send her a compliance plan. That deadline was today, and Wu responds with a letter of her own, basically saying, we dare you, come after us. Boston is not backing down. You're taking a look at part of that letter on your screen, and I want to tell you, she used some words where she accused the administration of unconstitutional threats and unlawful coercion, but basically saying Boston is going to continue to be a home for everyone, and that's a message that she really emphasized in the press conference. So take a listen to what she said.
Stop attacking our cities to hide your administration's failures. Unlike the Trump administration, Boston follows the law. And Boston will not back down from who we are and what we stand for.
And in this, Wu also basically took aim at the Trump administration for, in her view, not focusing on what Americans care about. She said they're not doing enough for the economy, and she basically said good news about the economy is as hard to find as the Epstein list.
Yep, she went there.
Obvious dig, yeah.
Yep, she went there. Hannah Brandt, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Joining me now is the Assistant Secretary at the Department of Homeland Security, Tricia McLaughlin, back with us once again here on the Hill. Tricia, hello.
Hello.
Thanks for coming in tonight. We appreciate it. So you saw the scene there in two different towns, D.C., Boston. Let me start with what you heard there from our Joe Khalil. And he showed the crime stats, residents saying, we want the help, but we don't understand why these National Guard troops are going where they are. Two times the amount of troops are expected to be coming in from Mississippi, Ohio, South Carolina, West Virginia. Is that footprint needed? And how is the decision made about where they go?
Well, it's high crime areas that are being targeted. I mean, you can sense the vibe shift here in D.C. Families are more out. They're going to museums. Parents and families are going out to restaurants. You see the law enforcement presence, and it does make you feel safe. But those statistics speak for themselves. Carjackings down 86%, 43% down as far as robberies go. Those are pretty stunning statistics in just 7 days to have, really showing the results and the success of the Trump administration.
Do these National Guard troops need to be carrying weapons? There's a report in the Wall Street Journal today that they are preparing at least to start carrying weapons in the coming days. Is that indeed the case, and if so, why?
I think President Trump and Secretary Noem and this Trump administration are going to give our law enforcement all the resources they need to be doing their jobs. If that means carrying a firearm, I'll let the experts determine that, but so be it. We weren't going to be hamstringing our officers like we've seen in past administrations.
Is that definitively coming?
I can't speak to that definitively, but I do think that we keep all options on the table.
Okay. There are reports tonight that the Department of Justice is looking into whether the crime statistics were manipulated. Is there any reason to believe, at least from your perch over there at DHS, that could be the case?
I will say this. In the 2024 election, the Biden administration told us inflation's down, the economy's fantastic, but the American people weren't feeling it. It's kind of like that here in Washington, D.C. We're being told that crime is down, but Washingtonians are not feeling it. As somebody who's been living here for the last 6 months, this is the most safe I've felt.
So if you look at the last 10 years or so, crime went up, and it has slightly come down in the last year or so, above 2016, 2017.
I would say anecdotally, Blake, I mean, you live around the Washington, D.C. area as well. How many people do you know that have been victims of robberies, victims of carjackings? A friend I know, actually, she was robbed of her own dog at gunpoint in broad daylight. Those are stunning stories. We hear about them all the time, Blake.
That's D.C. What about in Boston? The response to the mayor there today, Michelle Wu, would be what from your event?
Clearly politically ambitious. That was a whole lot of political theater, and we're just going to double down. We will flood the zone. Fortunately, because of that big, beautiful bill, we have 10,000 new ICE enforcement officers, and Americans are answering the call. We have 110,000 applications, and so a lot of those ICE enforcement officers will be heading to Mayor Wu's city in Boston.
So the more you hear, is it fair to say the more you hear that, the chances increase of more officers going there?
Blake, I will say this. Just last week, we arrested an MS-13 gang member, a child rapist, straight out of Boston. These are despicable stories, and the fact that Mayor Wu will not work with our ICE law enforcement to lodge detainers and so that these people can't reoffend is really disturbing. She's playing Russian roulette with the lives of Americans.
You work at DHS. Obviously, your boss is the secretary there, Kristi Noem. There was a headline, a comment really made by the top Democrat in this town, Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader. Here's what he said on a podcast recently. I want to get your reaction on the other side.
It's my expectation that Kristi Noem will be one of the first people hauled up to Congress shortly after the gavels change hands to get a real understanding for the American people as to this conduct that has taken place, the lack of respect for due process, for the rule of law.
So he's saying there, if Democrats flip the House, one of the first investigatory targets is going to be Kristi Noem, the DHS Secretary. To that, you would say what?
Secretary Noem has testified in front of Congress multiple times during her just 6-month tenure at Department of Homeland Security. We are a law enforcement agency. We are enforcing the law. Unfortunately, Hakeem Jeffries doesn't seem to like the law on the books about immigration, and yet he's unwilling or unable to change it. So he should get his facts in order.
Let me leave you with this. We saw the Secretary down on the border today. She was quite literally painting the border wall black, I believe.
Yep.
She said, in her words, to make it hotter.
Yes.
What should be the message that we expect coming out of this administration at this point in time, given the backdrop, which is, in part, the border numbers drastically fell. But there's also a real conversation and real concern among many of how the mass deportations are being carried out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so many Americans and so many politicians said that there was no way we could get border security. And yet President Trump and Secretary Noem in less than 100 days delivered a secure border against all odds. It's been really incredible. As far as the painting of that black wall, it is too, so it's hot to the touch so people won't try to climb that wall, but it also prevents rusting. So it's for durability as well.
All right, we'll leave it there. Tricia McLaughlin over at DHS. Thank you so much, Tricia. Thanks for coming in tonight. Appreciate it. All right, still to come tonight here on The Hill. How about this question? Should the United States government be using your taxpayer dollars to buy stakes in Fortune 500 companies? In this case, Intel. Is more to come of this? Kevin O'Leary joins us on the other side of the break. Shark Tank fame, you know him, of course. Plus this.
It is an option and a possibility. I won't certainly rule out anything as far as military options that the president has at his disposal.
No boots on the ground, but what about U.S. forces in the air above Ukraine? What President Trump, the commander-in-chief, isn't ruling out just yet. I thank you for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Berman. We're back on the other side in 4 minutes. I'll see you then. All right, so how about this tonight? Do you want the U.S. government to get into the business of owning companies? Is that where this country is now headed? Tonight, the Trump administration weighing whether to take a 10% stake in the legacy chip maker Intel. The Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, saying today it's a matter of national security, and the stake would come from grants that were allocated from the Bipartisan CHIPS Act.
I mean, that is exactly Donald Trump's perspective, which is, why are we giving a company worth $100 billion this kind of money? What is in it for the American taxpayer? And the answer Donald Trump has is, we should get an equity stake for our money.
Now, currently, China has the most state-owned businesses, over 1,000. Others like Sweden, Germany, Norway, Saudi Arabia either own or invest directly in businesses or have created sovereign wealth funds that maintain stakes in companies. Joining me now, you know him, Mr. Wonderful, chairman of O'Leary Ventures, friend of the show is the title that I like to use, Kevin O'Leary, and Mark Short, former White House Director of Legislative Affairs for President Trump and the former Chief of Staff to Vice President Trump. Gentlemen, hello to you both. Kevin, I want to start with you because I think this story is not being talked about enough. I think there's so many fascinating layers about it. The administration is basically saying, you know what, this is national security. It's us versus them, the U.S. and China. But on the other hand, buying into state-owned, having state-owned control of a company, that's something that Xi Jinping would approve of. Where are you?
Well, I hate this idea a lot because as an investor, I would never put my money into Intel at all. It's a loser. And in technology, we let the losers die and their assets get acquired by the winners. That's what makes America great. We should never change that. The Chips and Science Act was not a Trump initiative. It was Biden's. I read the act. Very few people have. It's awful. We should just cancel it. Don't give them the money at all. We don't need to back losers like Intel at all. It should be sold for car parts. Why am I being forced as an investor, taxpayer? If I don't want to invest it as an investor, as a taxpayer, I certainly don't want to invest in it. And if SoftBank wants to put money into this thing, let them do that. They're the private sector.
$2 billion or so.
Let the private sector buy this thing and fix it. It's a dog. It's an absolute loser. No way this is worth putting any money into. That's my story.
So is your beef the company or the concept or both?
I hate the concept of government picking winners. We are so good in America with entrepreneurship. We're so damn good that for 200 years, we lead everybody in technology. Don't mess with it, ever. Just let the losers die. Let this poor company go behind the barn and shoot itself. Why is it still around? Go sell it for car parts. Everybody knows it's a dog. Nobody wants to buy the product. Why is the government getting involved in this loser?
Mark, did you guys ever consider this in the first term?
I think that
the concept.
Well, look, I think there are certain advisors to the president like this. Certainly, Peter Navarro is one that believes this industrial complex. But I agree 100% with Kevin. This is an absolutely terrible idea. I think as Republicans have already condemned mayor candidate in New York for taking the government ownership of grocery stores, we can't at the same time be out there advocating that we're taking interest in Intel or even, frankly, taking percentages of sales of NVIDIA. I think it's an awful idea. And again, it wasn't that long ago that the Tea Party in part was formed on the basis of protesters being upset that you're taking taxpayer dollars and putting it into publicly traded banks. And so this is an absolutely awful idea.
All right, so I hear you on it, but I want to note for our audience here on NewsNation or those listening to us on SiriusXM, there was the other deal, MP Materials, where the Pentagon took up to a 15% stake for rare earth minerals and magnetics. That's that company. And I had Peter Navarro, since you just name-checked him, Mark, on the show shortly after that. And I asked if more of this was coming. Here's what he said, and then I'll pick it up from there.
We're going to have a lot of deals to fill out the supply chain. That's the strategy across critical minerals. We build our supply chain, we build our expertise in that area, and we achieve critical mineral dominance over time, just like we have strategic energy dominance.
So, Kevin, I heard the Commerce Secretary today cite national security. Peter Navarro there cited supply chains. What about the argument of this really is us versus them, meaning the United States versus China, and you got to take it head on somehow?
Well, the way to do that is to just give me as an investor the opportunity through tax planning, say to me, look, if you invest in rare earth, rare minerals, and we'll get you the permits to mine, and you don't pay any capital gains on the first 7 years, private money will pour in. That's how you actually put industrial policy in place. You give tax incentives. Then I have to take the risk as an investor. You don't have to take the risk as the government. Taxpayers don't have to take the risk. I have to do my due diligence, dig very deep to understand which companies to back, which management teams to back. That's private equity. That's what I do. That's what makes America so great. We take the risk. The government stays out of it. And while we're talking about rare minerals, let's go cut a deal with province of Ontario. Let's light that up. No tariffs on that stuff. We'll dig up there in the circle of fire. There's tons of it up there. They're right on the border. We can work that stuff out. There's so much opportunity. Don't pick winners and losers. What government employee can decide what to invest? What a horrible idea.
So Mark, how do you take this head on? Because clearly this is one of the ways that the administration's trying to.
Well, look, the administration has the ability to have export controls. I think also, as Kevin said, the better way is to deregulate your economy, make it more competitive. It's not to you don't compete with China by trying to be more like China. Frederick Hayek, warned a long time ago the fatal conceit of central planners who think they can allocate resources more efficiently than the market. We've learned time and again the market is the one who can allocate resources most efficiently.
Kevin O'Leary, thank you, sir. It's always great to see you and have you here on the Hill. Mark Short, catch you around later in the show. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Of course, you as well. Still much more ahead tonight here on the Hill. This is maybe the question right now. Putin and Zelensky, will they meet?
The president has spoken to both leaders about this, and both leaders have expressed a willingness to sit down with each other.
If so, how soon? If so, where? Lots of questions tonight. Kelly Meyer, other side of the break, live from the White House on what they're saying and what she's hearing. .30 tonight here at our nation's capital, less than 24 hours removed from President Trump completing his attempt to broker peace in Europe, holding talks with all major parties that have skin in the game: Russia, Ukraine, top European allies. And while it's unclear what set the tone in terms of a deal, the White House today outlined what's next for negotiations, saying that Putin potentially could be meeting with Zelensky.
President Trump spoke with President Putin by phone, and he agreed to begin the next phase of the peace process, a meeting between President Putin and President Zelensky, which would be followed, if necessary, by a trilateral meeting between President Putin, President Zelensky, and President Trump.
Our Kelly Meyer live at the White House tonight with the very latest on this attempt to try to get Putin and Zelensky, Kelly, in the same room together. What do we know tonight about if and when that might happen?
Yeah, something that we didn't think was possible perhaps a few weeks, even years ago. And this is something that we're talking about tonight. And even White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt was asked about the timing of that trilateral. And they say it's hard to say. They want to see what happens with that bilateral first. And one administration official telling me tonight that it's Secretary of State Marco Rubio picking up another gig. He's going to be leading the newly formed Joint Commission on Security Guarantees in Ukraine. So that's made up of national security advisors from these countries. But what we don't know, Blake, is what those security guarantees are going to look like. President Trump already ruled out U.S. boots on the ground, but it's what's in the skies that's really up in the air. Take a listen.
It is an option and a possibility. I won't certainly rule out anything as far as military options that the president has at his disposal. I'll let him do that. I can tell you he's definitively ruled out boots on the ground.
And I'm also learning tonight, Blake, that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs is expected to take part in a meeting with European military leaders on Ukraine this week. Blake.
So, Kelly, you're there for our audience who doesn't sort of know the ins and outs of the layout. You're there on the North Lawn. Just behind you is the South Lawn and the Rose Garden. And today we actually saw the president there kind of sort of for a moment and a little bit of a tease from the White House. What's that all about?
Yeah, we were standing right here, Blake, and heard a really loud, what sounded like soundtrack to Trump's 2024 campaign booming from the South Lawn. Actually, listen to it here, and we'll talk about it on the other side. So you see there the new Rose Garden with the umbrellas that Leavitt says are the same ones from Mar-a-Lago. She did bring the pool back to the Rose Garden and told them that the president is testing those new speakers for, quote, what will be the best event in the history of the White House. She said the next party is hopefully soon. Even the president, she said, it could be for the press, one of the first parties they have. The White House posting a picture of the president fist pumping to the music on X just a short while ago. And President Trump also was controlling the playlist there. So we'll see what happens with that first party and if we're invited, Blake.
Never know what a day on the job at 1600 is like. Our Kelly Meyer live on the North Lawn tonight. Yeah. Kelly, thank you. All right, joining me now is the Republican from the state of Georgia, Rich McCormick, member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and House Armed Services Committee as well. Congressman, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. Let's get back, obviously, to the main topic at hand here. Zelensky, Putin, and a possible meeting. What is your sense, and thank you for joining us tonight, sir, what is your sense of that actually happening, along with a three-way meeting involving President Trump?
Oh, right now, it looks like it's going to happen. The question is, leading up to this, what is Putin going to do? Every time they talked about negotiations previously, he would launch a major attack. So it didn't really go too well. I don't think he's a very genuine person. Maybe he's feeling the heat from China and India and other people who are going to be players in purchasing their energy, which has been sustaining this war, including people from Europe. So I think maybe he's realizing he has to come to the table right now. He's not negotiated in good faith up to this point. As a matter of fact, his quote-unquote compromise started off with, give me more than I already have, and then maybe I'll stop attacking you. That's not very good negotiation. But I'm sure he's saying that so that when he gets a quote unquote compromise, he actually gets more than otherwise he would have gotten with something else.
You describe him as not genuine, and I think most, especially in the West, would agree. Here, though, there was an interesting hot mic moment that was caught on camera yesterday when the president was meeting with the European leaders. I want to play it and then get your reaction.
I think to set up a trilateral, you know. So
and where do you want
I think he wants to make a deal for me. You understand that? As crazy as it sounds. Just sit down. Sit down, everybody. Okay.
President Trump, about Putin, I think he wants to make a deal for me. Do you think the president's right there, or do you think he's misreading the ex-KGB agent?
I think he wants to make a deal. The deal that he offered, once again, is, hey, yeah, make a deal and give me more than I already have. That's not a deal. That's not a compromise. That's not even negotiation. I would love to see what we're going to do. I mean, Europe wants to, when you talk about NATO forces and Zelensky, they're talking about having some sort of guarantee that America's going to come to their aid if they invade further. The problem is they already had that guarantee in the Budapest Accord in 1994 when they gave up their nuclear arms. And we did help, but we didn't really come in the way that they anticipated. So I'm going to be really curious to see what they come to. I think it's not over by a long shot. I think there's going to be a lot more negotiations. Hopefully there is some sort of cease and desist in the violence up until that point. But they're a long ways apart still. And I think Secretary Rubio kind of alluded to that.
A long ways apart. So are you bearish on the possibility of a deal?
I think they'll get a deal, but the question is when and how much more negotiations out there. Because, like you said, Putin said very clearly he wants more than he already has. Zelensky's going to want to, of course, have him give up territory. Is the compromise basically where they're at right now? I don't know. I'm not sure if Europe's comfortable with that. Hopefully we'll get it done soon. But, you know, these negotiations are not easy things, especially when you talk about somebody's homeland. If we were negotiating the giving up of some of the United States land, imagine what that would be like for us. I mean, they're just as patriotic as we are, and this won't be easy.
So on the idea, Congressman, I'll leave you with this on security guarantees. The president seemed to open the door a lot wider yesterday than he did today, where it seemed to be slammed shut as it relates to American boots on the ground. I want to play this real quick, and then I'll get your reaction.
Your team has talked about security guarantees. Could that involve U.S. troops? Would you rule that out in the future?
We'll let you know that maybe later today. We're meeting with 7 great leaders of great countries also, and we'll be talking about that.
Well, you have my assurance, and I'm president, and I'm just trying to stop people from being killed.
So you can see the change there from yesterday afternoon to today. What do you think security guarantees look like from the U.S. perspective?
Well, it's interesting because Putin says absolutely no NATO forces in Ukraine. He sees that as a step towards NATO membership. He doesn't want to see that. He's like more along the lines of not wanting boots on the ground either from America, maybe just air power. The problem with air power is meaning where's it going to be based and when is it going to be activated? And I'm a huge fan of Top Gun. I mean, it's why I joined the military. But we haven't had a direct air conflict with Russia, nor do I ever anticipate one. So I'm not sure how much of a deterrent that's going to be. So there's still a lot to think about when we talk about military intervention or at least deterrence. This is, once again, a very complex question.
Yeah, still a lot unanswered there. Member of the House Armed Services, member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee as well, Congressman Rich McCormick, live with us tonight from the state of Georgia. Thank you, sir.
Semper Fi. Thanks.
You got it. All right, still to come tonight here on The Hill. Have you seen this? We talked about it a little bit off the top. The DHS Secretary, Kristi Noem, at the border today, painting the border wall black. And as she did that today, did you hear what the top Democrat in Washington is threatening as it relates to possibly her future when we return?
Bill O'Reilly on Cuomo.
I have to tell the truth.
America's favorite sparring duo with TV's liveliest, most honest debate.
That's an opinion, not a fact.
Tomorrow at 8, 7 Central, only on NewsNation. News for all Americans.
So just moments ago, the Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, wrapping up a press conference in New Mexico. You see some of the video there. She's at the southern border, in which she announced a new initiative regarding the actual physical border wall.
Today, we are also going to be painting it black. That is specifically at the request of the president, who understands that in the hot temperatures down here, when something is painted black, it gets even warmer, and it will make it even harder for people to climb.
But in addition to that battle that she's waging at the border, Noem just might have a new adversary. In the House of Representatives, the minority leader, the top Democrat, Hakeem Jeffries, on a recent podcast, he issued this warning for the secretary if he were to become the Speaker of the House.
It's my expectation that Kristi Noem will be one of the first people hauled up to Congress shortly after the gavels change hands to get a real understanding for the American people as to this conduct that has taken place, the lack of respect for due process, for the rule of law.
How about that? Full panel here with me now. Mark Short, back with me once again, former Chief of Staff to Vice President Mike Pence. Lauren Wright, NewsNation political contributor. Lindsey Granger is the co-host of Rising on the Hill. And Scott Bolden, NewsNation political contributor. Hello to you all. Thanks for being in. I even think this side of the table would agree that maybe the thing that Democrats got wrong the most in 2024 was the border. I don't think there's much pushback there. But the issue going forward for Republicans, I think, is the mass deportations, how they're being carried out and why. And I want to start off with Hakeem Jeffries there, because clearly he thinks that this issue, immigration and the border, is something to talk about now and in the future. And I just wonder, given what we learned in 2024, if that's the right approach going forward.
Well, I think a lot of people wanted immigration. You're absolutely right. There's no divisiveness on that. People thought that it was out of control under Biden. But a lot of the polls have showed us that people think the way it's being handled by President Trump and his administration is not exactly what they wanted. They were looking for criminals to be deported, not everyday people. Even people like Joe Rogan saying, okay, well, now I can't get my irrigation done, or all these kind of things, and asking Anna Paulina Luna about that. Is this exactly what people wanted, or are you guys doing something else? But I think when you talk about what Hakeem Jeffries said, even though a lot of people are going to be frustrated because it feels like political theater again, to try to relitigate anyone who's in the Trump administration.
Ping pong ball back and forth.
But at the same time, there's some validity there, because if you think about the constitutional issues that may have been breached, like how people are being detained, what the humane conditions may or may not be, how people are not following due process when it comes down to some of these migrants that are being deported. These are all real issues, and what Congress is asked to do is have oversight over these things.
But Congress and the House under the Republican leadership aren't asking those questions. Republicans ought to be asking these questions about alligator Alcatraz and due process rights, and what happened to the commitment of getting all the criminals out first, which America was very supportive of, the lack of due process. How are you able to transport individuals who may be here illegally off to foreign lands away from their families or the U.S.? How are they able to do that, and how did that decision-making take place?
Look, this is a hypothetical, because this is if he becomes Speaker, right? So he's already going like a few steps down the road.
We're claiming it early.
You'd like to get there early. I just wonder if this is where he should be going.
Well, what's the policy alternative? I would like to hear from the Democrats on the panel. Is everyone allowed to stay? What's the better option?
No, we're not saying they're allowed to stay.
So
there ought to
then
be a pathway to citizenship.
Okay.
And if you want to deport them, then deport them under our Constitution, give them due process, and do it in an orderly, pragmatic, and lawful fashion. Okay. That's all I would want to see.
I remember all those Democrat oversight investigations into the border when Biden was president. We're into his mental capacity when he was president. Democrats did a great job of oversight.
Biden's not president anymore.
Well, you were saying that was what the
I was talking about other presidents.
The reality is that, look, this is such an idle threat. Oversight is Congress's job. If the Democrats take over Congress, they're going to have every single cabinet secretary up for investigations. But if they want to fight on the border, I think Republicans would relish the chance to say who has a better record on border security.
So there was a fascinating scene in Boston today. The mayor there, Michelle Wu, had this press conference, a spectacle, I think you could say, as well, pushing back against Pam Bondi, pushing back against the Trump administration. And this is what she said at one point. Listen.
Under the Trump administration, groceries are less affordable. Housing is harder to build. Cures for cancer are farther away. And good news on our economy has been as hard to find as the Epstein list.
Zing. But I wonder, like, that's kind of where they're going to be going, Mark.
Look, I think that's a far more effective attack is the president's trade policy. And I think that the economic numbers should give the White House concern. And when you look at jobs, you look at the number of bankruptcies that are up for the last couple of months, the highest level since 2010. That is a far more effective than having mariachi bands and talking about the sanctuary cities.
I agree with that. Republicans still have the advantage on immigration, however shrinking that advantage may be. I think it's a bad idea for Democrats to gamble on this. I mean, opinion is so stark on this that Trump had a child separation policy. The First Lady helped roll it back. Laura Bush wrote an op-ed. Remember how controversial that was? And Trump, after that, got elected on border security. That's how much Americans care about this. They're willing to let the policy slide. They're willing to let it be blurry around the edges. Problems with the enforcement, sure. But Republicans are still the only ones that have a clear policy position.
But that's not what the numbers say, though. The numbers say that he's losing on immigration now because of how it's implemented. I think the Democrats ought to make immigration an issue, and they ought to argue that they should do it the right way.
Which party do you trust?
Should you make crime and what's going on in Washington, D.C. an issue? Because I wonder, Scott, and I talked about this with Lindsay last week, if your party is falling into the trap of Donald Trump is cracking down on crime, and we're against that because fill in the blank.
Well, the best way to fill in that blank isn't that there isn't a crime or that there isn't a crime issue, is that partner with us as opposed to doing this big federal takeover. The statistics show
it seems like you're pushing back on...
No, I'm not pushing back. I'm pushing back on protecting individual rights, which is fundamental to the Constitution. And then here's the political reality. The top 10 states or cities that have the worst crime rates, 9 of the 10 are in red states and red cities. It's not a Democratic issue. We've given them the narrative. We need to take that narrative back. You know what the 10th city is? Baltimore. So 1 out of the top 10. So, right? So the narrative is false.
They're all Democrat mayors. There might be red states, but they're all Democrat mayors.
No, they're red cities and red states.
I think in both instances with immigration and in D.C., it's just federal overreach is the problem. And I think when you think about what Muriel Bowser, she signed into law what was passed by Congress, which is the Secure D.C. Act, there has been active things that have been implemented, like strengthening gun penalties and a lot of other things that have brought crime down and been part of that statistic and that number that came out this year that shows crime is down in D.C. So when you talk about realistic long-term solutions, that looks like community policing. It looks like working with local government to find sustainable solutions, not pushing homeless people and going into Ward 7 and 8 and just arresting all people of color.
We know that works, but here's what really works that the Republicans do control that they could implement versus the National Guard. There's a $100 million bill that's pending right now to hire more police officers, to hire more judges, to hire more prosecutors, which would also bring the crime down, as opposed to this stunt of bringing in federal officers
what is
to
it,
do
Scott?
this.
Is it a stunt or is it overreach? You can't have
They're
both.
not
Is it
fighting crime in high crime areas.
Yeah.
This is a show. They're not in Ward 6, 7, 8, 9.
You're simultaneously, and this is what Democrats
are
doing, they're saying this is fake, it's symbolic, it's meaningless, and it's a constitutional threat, and it's a threat to democracy.
Democrats are saying
the same people are saying you're saying D.C. is safe for the same ones who are telling us the border is secure during Biden. Okay, that's what America voters say.
I got to run, but I want to hear from you.
I never said that.
Real quick, because you've spent hours upon hours with Donald Trump in the Oval Office. What do you expect out of him next on this front?
I think he's going to keep doubling down on this. Yeah, I mean, I think that this is a winning political issue for him.
All right, we'll leave it there.
And I love you, Scott. I just have to say I love you, Scott.
We're talking about this,
but I love you.
But we're not talking about Epstein.
We know that's the case. All right.
Okay, good.
Still to come. Other side of the break. This is actually something I was talking about with Mark in one of the breaks. There are going to be headlines coming out in the next 2 days that's really going to shape the narrative. And I'm going to explain it to you on the other side of the break. And still to come here on NewsNation, Elizabeth Vargas reports. Coming up, she'll be talking to someone who was forced to turn vegan because a tick bite made her deathly allergic to meat and dairy. What's that all about? 7 minutes away, my take and what's trending when we return. I'm trying to catch up on your day. Here's some of what's trending right now on thehill.com. The top stories there. One of the big questions, will there be a meeting between Zelensky and Putin? And how about this? If so, where do you host it? Emmanuel Macron pitching Switzerland to be the location. We'll see. Politicos are going to be watching this one. This is in the state of Virginia. The governor's race there, new poll, Abigail Spanberger, someone to watch in that state. Obviously, Virginia, close to Washington, big red-blue mix there, so they're going to be having their eyes on that race. And then how about this? Trump targets museums as last remaining segment of woke. This is the president, the Smithsonian, and what he's trying to do there. To check out those stories and more, all you have to do is scan the QR code on your screen or visit thehill.com. All right, time for my take now, and you might need to do some patchwork on an old headline, because Home Depot is now saying that tariffs will lead to some rising prices at its stores. Now, that's a reversal from earlier this year when the company said it didn't have any plans whatsoever to raise prices due to tariffs. Now, here's why I bring it up. Because you should start to get ready for the headlines to roll in. Here's just part of the schedule on the corner of Wall and Broad in the upcoming days. Home Depot reported its earnings today. Tomorrow, you got Lowe's, Home Depot's top competitor. Target as well on Wednesday, and then fast forward to Thursday, you got the big one there as Walmart's numbers start to roll in. All of this is a chance for executives to reveal and answer how, if at all, tariffs are impacting their bottom line. And at the end of the day, your tab at checkout at some of America's most well-known big box stores. Will the major retailers all say the same thing that Home Depot said today? That tonight, we can't nail down for sure. But a much clearer picture is likely to emerge here in the coming days on the issue that we know impacts all of us and all the lawmakers here in this town as well. That, of course, is prices.